we've been talking about the ESPN 25 under 25, where all of a sudden Paolo Banchero, like after a bad shooting week to start the season, is behind 5 guys that he has no business being behind. But we'll maybe save that for a later date when we take our victory lap. How about that?
It was a tough list. I actually will reference it later in my topics here. Actually a decent way.
We are doing it today.
No. It's just a small nugget of a bigger picture thing. But I have like 5 things here. Topics, questions, just, discussion points, things that I've just noticed watching that I kind of want to run by you and get your thoughts on. So let's start with the first one. Mavs 6-1. Kyrie and Luka, they kind of look good together. And I caught a lot of the game the other night because they beat the Magic, and the Magic were horrific in the second half of that game. But I kind of came away being like, because remember before the season, I asked you the question, and I think it was our preseason question segment, where I was like, who would be more justified in asking for a trade after the season, Embiid or Luka? And you said Embiid, and I said I actually think it would potentially be Luka because I just think that Mavs team is so bad. And I got to tell you, after watching, I think I might be wrong. The Kyrie thing kind of works. And it's funny because Bill said on the Over-Unders pod, what was it? The last normal Kyrie season was 2017. And, I know it's like the gambler's fallacy to be like, oh, yeah, like, for if you're playing roulette, like, it's been black, 10 times in a row. Oh, the next one's going to be red. No, it's going to be 50-50 every time. And me thinking, hey, this could actually be a normal Kyrie season is probably stupid. But at some point, we're going to probably get a normal Kyrie season, right? And I don't know. I just like the vibes with this team. Lively's good. Grant Williams looked fantastic. So, and I know I think you and House both had the over for them this season just on Luka alone, and Bill had the under. But at what point, I mean, are we ready to say that like Luka's a top 5 player and we were way too dismissive in the preseason of saying this team was going to suck?
I didn't think they would suck because of him. So you're right about that. I mean, he's maybe the 3rd or 4th best player in the NBA. And it felt like at the end of last year in the regular season, the concerns with Kyrie, which are totally justified, but Luka on his own and knowing what he's capable of, I still think they'll win enough games. Like they'll win enough. I'm not taking them serious as a West contender, but they'll win enough games. And it felt like the carryover of last year. I don't know that he was in great shape. Maybe he's feeling himself a bit coming off the Western Conference Finals appearance and the whole thing, because the numbers are there. But I was hoping this would be a bit of a motivational reset for him, because it felt like the lowest his stock had been since he had come into the league and, had those incredible playoff series against the Clippers. So part of this feels a little schedule-y, though, as well. The wins are against the Magic, the Hornets, the Bulls, the Grizzlies, the Nets, and the Spurs. And their only losses to the Nuggets, who they're just not even in their class. But there are things about this team that I do like. They're number 4th on offense. Defense is, passable at this point. They're not going to be a great defensive team. But I'm not willing to go like, all right, all the Kyrie stuff is fine, because I'll just wait for the next weird Kyrie thing. But Luka, like specific to just Luka, just felt like everybody was too low on him at the time. Lively's a great fit for this team because he is a limited offensive player, but he's playing with the best lob guy in the game, because Luka can go to any square inch that he wants to get to on the floor. And if you just pay attention to him, you're going to get a lot of opportunities. And Grant's been terrific. Hardaway's always pretty steady, maybe a little underrated for them. I don't love the team. I like Josh Green a little bit. But it felt like the whole deal was very, it's not anti-Luka. It was just too low on him, because it felt like people were kind of turning the page on the guy a little quickly.
I think you still look at the roster and you go, it's a lot of really limited guys. And Luka, I guess, like you have to be a very specific player to play with Luka. So I understand that's part of what the roster building is like. I mean, if this was LeBron's team, I feel like, these guys would all be in trade rumors already. It's that kind of bleak of a situation. But Luka just kind of makes it work, I think, more than maybe anybody else. He's like the most specific. Like, he just needs very specific guys to play with him, and maybe I just underestimated how many of those guys and how decent they were on this team. So I'm with you. I'm not saying they're like a West contender, but I think they're I'm open to the Kyrie Luka thing, I think, a little bit more than I was early on after watching it for a couple games, specifically in that Magic game. All right,
look, Kyrie will shoot it better. I mean, he's shooting it pretty low by his standards. If you were telling me I was just getting a Kyrie basketball season, then I'd be like, okay, playing game, maybe scare somebody. Luka in a game, You know, that imagine being, if that comes down to it, like they don't have the greatest record, but they're playing a team that we actually feel pretty good about, and then you get stuck with Luka in a play-in. Like that's scary. It's never been about, like, nobody that doesn't like Kyrie, nobody thinks he sucks at basketball. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not, the Kyrie conversation is not about, oh, I don't like him as a basketball player. It's just, do you expect to be smooth sailing from here until May? And the smart money has been on no.
I would love a Lakers Mavs playing game. Just putting that out into the universe. Next one. T-Wolves, number 1 in defensive rating. Gobert looks kind of like the old Gobert again, which I know we just say, oh, it's a regular season player. But you know what? It's better than last year. Ant went ballistic against the Celtics, and he's still up and down, I think. But he's obviously young. But it's again promising signs. Towns has been all right as well. A lot of people before the season really liked him as a regular season team. But like, what is it? What would you be willing to think about this team with this big three in the West? Like, what would have to happen for you to actually take them seriously as a real, like, top 3, even team that can make the conference finals in the West?
Conference finals. I'm not there yet. Here's what it would be. It would be Anthony Edwards getting to a level that, when we talk about Giannis and Jokic and Luka and whatever, Anthony Edwards doesn't seem like a weird name to be there. And I actually think he's capable of being that kind of player. And that is rare for me before it happens to go, yep, I think he actually can be one of the 5 best players in the NBA. Maybe higher, whatever that ranking means for him, because that's how special I think he is. He was so good in that Celtics game. The defensive play against Tatum, and the ball's loose. He's got Tatum on the ground, and then he like almost went to tackle Tatum. I love seeing that ferocity from him in that. And then he'd said afterwards, like, Tatum was talking shit. So he's like, all right, whatever. He scored 8 in overtime. It was also his passing off of drives. He had 2 passes off of drives where I was like, wait, is that not that he's never passed out of a drive and kick situation, but the reads on them were terrific, and they both led to like huge shots at the time. I don't know if there's enough shooting on this team. The defense we know is going to be really good. And then you've got McDaniels, who, when you watch how intense he is at picking somebody up early, just as he crosses half court, and forget contesting the shot, contesting the dribble. Like, that's what Jaden does on defense. I still don't know if there's enough there offensively to feel like he's actually going to be like the real piece to it. And I know Cat's numbers have dipped here. And that's because his shooting splits are dreadful. He's 38%, 24 from 3. It's not going to be that bad. I still think there's some substitutional stuff where they have bigs that they can throw at a bigger team. I know everybody kind of talks about that Denver series, but I don't know. I never really felt like they were actually like a real threat to put that thing to 6 or 7 games. And I know it ended up only being 5, so it'd have to be one of the other games. It would be, to answer your question, Ceruti, it would be Anthony Edwards like solidifying himself as one of the 5 best players in the NBA at some point this season, where we're already putting him in that group. And I actually think he can be that guy. The early returns are terrific, and everybody else has to accept it. I don't think Towns is going to love that. He's still taking basically the same number of shots he is this year and the last year. The assists are down because he's not going to have the ball. But that's, like, I don't know if Towns is the kind of guy, based on every interview, every clip I've ever heard of him in an interview, I kind of leave myself going like, what is he talking about? So I don't know if that guy's wired to be like, hey, this is cool, this is completely Ant's team, but that's how it has to happen. And I think there's going to be certain nights with Gobert where it looks really, really good. And I think, as we've seen in the playoffs past, there's going to be other teams based on the matchup where it's not going to look that good. But Golden State's not impossible. Phoenix still hasn't really even played together yet. So maybe they are in that kind of tier 2 thing behind Denver of fighting it out.
All right. Tyrese Haliburton. And I'm not trying to bum out Kings fans here, but this is potentially going to bum me out. So I think he's been fantastic this year. He's averaging 24 or nearly 12 a game, flirting with 50, 40, 90. And this is where I'll bring up the ESPN top 25 under 25. They had Luka 1, they had Ant 2, they had Wemby 3, and they have Haliburton 4. And I actually don't think that's insane at all. Ahead of Ja, obviously ahead of Paolo, ahead of a lot of other guys that are kind of in that vicinity. I'm happy that Light the Beam happened last year. I think the Kings are a fun team. Obviously, they're very fun on offense. But the Sabonis sort of decline happened in the playoffs last year. I think it's kind of carried over into this year, being like, what kind of player is he? I saw a couple guys on Twitter comparing him to, is he just like, 2020's David Lee, which I think is incredibly disrespectful. But at some point, I kind of feel like this trade, the more we get, the more years we get behind us on it, I think it's going to look like a disaster for the Kings. Am I wrong? Because I think Haliburton has a chance to be like a legit top 5 point guard, superstar potential player. And the Kings traded that guy. And yes, they kept De'Aaron Fox, and I like De'Aaron Fox, don't get me wrong. And I even like Sabonis. But they traded the best player out of all of those 3 players. And I think Haliburton has the best chance to be like a legit star guy out of all those guys. And I just wonder if 2-3 years from now, as fun as this Kings thing is right now, we're going to be like, they traded him for Sabonis. So again, I don't want to bum Kings fans out. Maybe they're going to get mad at me, but that's kind of how I feel, man. I think he's awesome.
Yeah, I don't think it's 2 or 3 years. I think it's 2 or 3 days ago.
Okay, fair.
But we've already done it because that trade normally doesn't happen. They're like, wait, this guy's good, and you already gave up on him? And it's like, no, they wanted to get him away from De'Aaron Fox because they just didn't think it made sense for 2 guys that were so good with the ball in their hands to play next to each other. And they added somebody in Sabonis who, when you think about him, you go, man, the rebounding, the passing for somebody like him, it fit a positional need. It made sense. Sacramento finally makes the playoffs. They fight it out with a Golden State team, which is a brutal first round matchup. They've got this whole, there's a way you could tell the story. Like if you were a completely biased author, you could write about what a win this was if you focus on what's happened with Sacramento since this time. And I know the record sucks right now. There's some bad Sabonis numbers that exist that, the net negative stuff that I was looking at this morning. I don't know that it's super fair 6 games in to look at that. But then you think of Sabonis as like, what does it really mean? What does it give you? Well, it gives you nothing against Denver. It is somebody Golden State just stopped defending.
Killed, yeah.
Right. And I know he had the hand injury and all those things. So you're basically asking if there's a whole new round of being bummed out again for Sacramento fans, if Haliburton becomes not just an all-star, but like a perennial all-star, because they're running one of the best offenses in the league. The Pacers are scrappy and, can put a bunch of points up on you. I don't know that anybody's scared of it in the playoffs, which will be the next test that Haliburton will have to get through. But I get what you're saying, because I think people have already been shocked, bummed out, reconciled, justifiably justified. But then it's like, yeah, but we'd like you to prepare to be upset again, which I think you're right about.
Well, when I say 2 to 3 years, I mean like when Haliburton's like maybe a potential MVP candidate, like winning playoff series. Like
MVP.
I'm not putting it all on, I'm leaving it all on the table. I think it's all fair. Like I think he's just that incredible to watch. Like I just love watching that team, and it's obviously mostly led by him. I mean, the other thing too is like, if you're a Kings fan, I would totally argue and be like, dude, whatever. We're fun now. Like we were a disaster for a decade or 2 decades, really. Just shut your mouth. And I'd be like, you know what? You're probably right. Like
well,
I'm
that's
happy
exactly
for you guys. I am happy for the Kings, but man. And here's the other thing too, is it's not just Kings fans. I mean, there were all those rumors about the Sixers potentially being able to trade him for to get Haliburton for Ben Simmons, which they didn't want to do. Apparently Morey didn't want to do. I think Toronto was in the mix. There's like probably 10 teams that are like, wait, we could have just had Haliburton for like nothing, and now he's this guy. So it's not really just the Kings. And yes, his stock has gone up obviously since he's left and gotten his own team. But man, I just can't help but think this is going to be it's going to be a tough look, because I like De'Aaron Fox, but he's just not Haliburton. You're taking Haliburton every time.
Okay.
All right, next one here. This is probably my favorite one, and it's my favorite draft class. I don't even know if I have a question. It's just an observation. I love the 2021 draft class. It's probably my favorite of the last decade or so, because every single month we change who the best guy in this draft is. And I think I know that's the media thing. It's like, oh, it's just like this guy has a good month, let's just hop on the bandwagon. But I honestly think it's like kind of justified. So I'm talking about, this is the draft with Cade, Mobley, Jalen Green, Scotty, Franz, Jalen Suggs, my guy. And because before the season, I think I had mentioned that I thought that Franz had a really good case for being the best guy in this draft. But if I'm really honest, like Cade is the most talented guy. And if he's right and he's healthy, like I don't think it's debatable that Franz has had a better 2 years since they got drafted. And a lot of that is health. He won the World Cup with Germany, obviously. And Cade hasn't been healthy. But Cade's incredible. He's got an incredible start to the season. And I think, if all things are equal, he's probably the best player. But then there's been the Mobley buzz, and he was the rookie of the year, an incredible guy. Scotty Barnes is now having this second resurgence after having a really good rookie year, a kind of weird and bad second season, and then now playing well again in his third season. I mentioned my guy Franz, who's probably not as talented as all those guys, but I still think, is he going to be a really good player or a star? That's kind of what the next couple years of his career is going to be. Şengün, I freaking love watching that guy. He's the best player on the Rockets. He's certainly their best young player and the guy that I would build around if I was them. More than anybody else. Then you got Kuminga as like this is his year all-star. Like every year is Kuminga's year, and I understand why people buy into it. I don't really have a point or anything really or a question here. I just love this draft class because it's all over the place.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like all the quarterbacks after Mahomes, where like, wait, would you want this guy? If Scotty Barnes is going to shoot 42% from three, then we can start changing, because I went from loving him to going, okay, temper that love a bit, because will he ever be somebody who's going to be getting you into your offense? He's going to be finished. Like, even as an aside, like when Wembanyama, he may dominate games in ways that we've never seen before. And we get a sample of that in the Phoenix one. But for Wembanyama to be one of the all-time greats, you have to be like ending helpless offensive possessions in huge playoff games, creating off the dribble on your own. That's basically the test that you have to pass to be one of the all-time greats. Because we just don't, big guys aren't the same unless there's some big resurgence, everybody throwing to the post. I don't see how that's ever happening again with three-point shooting taking over this game. So with Barnes, in the incredible game that he had the other night, where he's hitting all of his threes, like if that's what I'm getting, if I'm getting three-point shooting Scotty Barnes, then we have a real conversation about what he's capable with, because his playmaking is incredible. The rebounding's nuts. I mean, he's 23, 10, and 6 right now, but the previous 2 years he was 30 and 28% from three, and this year he's 42%. It's 7 games. So let's see. But I still have always, it's a bit like Evan Mobley. Like, maybe Mobley won't be the guy. Maybe Barnes won't be the guy, but every team would want one of those dudes. Barnes was 5th in scoring on the Raptors last year. This year he's the leading scorer. I don't think it'll ever be called the Jalen Suggs draft. Not to be mean.
No, it won't.
Nope.
But I'm telling you, I was talking about this with Bill yesterday. That dude, like, just throw the box score out when you're talking about Jalen Suggs. He just does things that he's a winning player. His instincts are excellent. The shooting's never going to be great. He's probably on the worst team for him because they need him to shoot and he can't. But that guy's going to be good, and he's going to be a good player on a good team at some point.
Yeah, his instincts in some of the stuff he did his year with Gonzaga, because he did. Like, when they got him in, the story was they were like, yeah, we didn't really think he could shoot it. And he did enough. Yeah. I'd have to look up the college stats again, but I feel like his shooting prowess was a surprise to the people at Gonzaga. And that's why you were like, well, wait, maybe this will actually work out a little bit better. I don't know if we didn't even mention Giddey, by the way, who is kind of having a weird year. It seems like the Chet thing has kind of screwed where he is in the pecking order on that team, because Chet's been so good that I don't know that Giddey right, because they got to play Dort and they've got to play Jalen Williams. Like, I was even noticing the other night with them, that'll be a substitution pattern thing that I pay attention to. But yeah, Suggs was like 59% from the floor overall, 34% on threes, and I don't feel like that's what I'm watching. He's going to be low 30s, right? Let's see here.
Right now in threes, he might not even be there.
On threes, yeah. He's 27% for his career. He was 33% last year. He's 25% this year. He's actually taken a tick more this year than he was last year.
He's not afraid. I'll say that.
No, he's not afraid. I mean, that team has a lot of dudes that are not afraid to shoot whatsoever. But I think what will happen with this is that it'll be, why did we debate this with Cade?
Maybe.
Because that's how special Cade looks. And the fact that he is that big doing the stuff that he's doing, I just hope Jaden Ivey's doing it next to him at some point. My God, that is something to continue to monitor. All right, last one.
All right, here we go. Real quick question. What's the most surprising number? That Steph, KD, and LeBron are basically at the top of the points per game rankings right now. Milwaukee being 24th in defense, or Trey Young being abysmal from the field shooting?
Trey's not shooting it well. He's 27% on threes. He's taking 6 a game.
He hasn't been shooting well for a few years, though. This isn't that new. It's worse, but it's not that new.
No, it's the previous 3 seasons, he was 34%, 38%. Then last year was just under 34% the previous 3 years. The funny thing, I was looking at this. I don't want to do this because I hate when people like, hey, let me ask you a question. There's no chance you're ever going to get right. So I'm not going to do that. But when I think of Trey and his shooting attempts, I was like, where is he in the league right now as far as attempts per game? He's at 6.3 attempts per game from 3, but it feels like he shoots a lot of them, right? Because he's always kind of like pulling up, and it feels like he's the earliest heat check guy in the NBA. Like, you actually are not hot right now, so you're not supposed to take the heat check one. But it's 6.3 attempts per game from 3. Hits 44th in the NBA. There's 43 guys ahead of him taking more threes per game as of right now. Like, okay, it's early. Well, last year he was 42nd in 3-point attempts per game last year. Of the guys that are in front of him, including him, so he's 44, so the 43 guys that are ahead of him, there's only 2 guys that are shooting it worse from 3 right now in the NBA, and that's Julius Randle, who's a mess at 25%. By the way, that video of him was at the Thunder game where he didn't want to get back on defense. I understand blips, 80-game season, guy plays all the time. But combining that with me doing the one game focus on Julius Randle against the Heat and then going, all right, I'm done. And then everybody's like, hey, I actually was really hurt. I just can't imagine being good enough to be a pro athlete and having a moment. And that was a huge possession where he was upset with Brunson and decides, I'm just not going to play. I'm just not going to play in this game. I'm going to check, or I'm not going to play in this play. I'm going to check out. I couldn't understand it. So anyway, back to Trey Young. So Keegan and Randall are below them, whatever. Like we said, it's all earlier this year, but it's still less. He's taking less attempts per game than I think you would think when you think of Trey Young. And that's probably good because his floater is maybe the best in the league. And he's taking 9.3 free throw attempts per game this season, which is a career high. I thought we fixed this NBA. I thought we fixed this shit with Trey. Apparently you didn't. You didn't get your own memo. So the Trey
he also might still be underrated as like a playmaker. He's such a good playmaker.
Yeah, it's just that I just don't think it's great when you have one guy that, whatever. I've already done this segment too many times. So the Trey thing, it's not going to be this bad. I don't think he's just going to end up shooting this poorly, even though you're right. Historically, from 3, this is 3 out of the last 4 years. Well, it's not even a third full year, so let's not worry about it. But the numbers are a little bit lower in 2 of the last 3 than maybe people would expect. Milwaukee's defense, it was 4th last year. It's 24th this year. If you go through all the net ratings on all these players that play for the Bucks, Giannis is a plus 2.6, Dame's a minus 12, Brook Lopez is a minus 17. 5 second rounder Jay Crowder, he's a minus 10. Malik Beasley's a minus 20. Marshawn, he's the plus 16. He actually is in the rotation. They tried everything the other night against the Nets. They played some zone. They switched everything and went small. They took Lopez out and put Portis in at center. And this got alarming in the Toronto game because I had watched Toronto before against Portland, was like, God, this offense is struggling. And then there was a game after that, the overtime loss to Chicago, where I didn't like their offense again. I was like, is Toronto just going to be bad on offense this year? Well, they're 25th in offense, except when they play Milwaukee. Milwaukee wasn't that Toronto was just making shots. Milwaukee's transition defense was gross. Like a high school coach would have said, that's it, I'm just teaching chemistry. If that was the coach, if that was the team that he was coaching. There's a number here, cleaning the glass, that teams are getting transition attempts on 43% of their live rebound chances. So 43% of the time, defensive rebound, they're getting out in transition and getting an actual attempt that would be considered in that transition window. So we can talk about rotations and all this stuff. Get back or get matched up. Figure out your cross matches, or maybe they're getting worked in some of these cross matches. I mean, look, the Drew Dame drop-off was going to be significant. It shouldn't be this bad. So there's that. But the most surprising thing is the age that we're seeing. LeBron is 39 in December. Durant turned 35 in September. Steph will be 36th in March. Those are three of the top scorers in the NBA right now. I think it's three of the top 15. I think LeBron might be 15th right now in scoring. By the way, LeBron, despite being 39 in December and Durant 35 in September, he's played 18,000 more minutes than Durant has, and he's played about 24,000 more minutes than Steph has. So if you look at the age 35 plus seasons, Steph has the all-time points per game number. That's this year. I don't think he's going to average 35. His shooting splits are absurd. He has the highest scoring average for somebody 35 or older at 35 points a game right now. Durant's number 2 at 30 points per game. After a little blip of like worrying about Durant, some of the shots he was settling for, I think he's been terrific again, but that team's just uncertain. And then you've got LeBron at 25 a game. The Lakers right now, with LeBron, they're plus 53 of them on the court. Off the court, they're minus 77. So this group right now, what we're seeing, not even a month into the season, is we're seeing the number 1, the number 2, and number 11 points per game scoring numbers from guys 35 or older. So 3 of the top 11 all-time in NBA history. And LeBron has 4 of the 8 spots. So if you think of the 3 of top 11, we're like, hey, who are the other names? Well, LeBron's got 4 of the other ones too. Then there's a couple other dudes. So that is, despite their resumes, to seeing those guys continue to do this, and I know the science and all the different stuff, and LeBron's missed, if you go back and look at his minutes and everything, he's like 35, 36 minutes a game right now. Anthony Davis is playing the most minutes he's played in like forever.
Yeah.
But, LeBron's going to miss time. He is going to miss time. But when he's been in there, he's been really their only answer a lot for them on offense when AD isn't available.
Something I was thinking about this morning, because, both Steph and KD are 35, LeBron's 38. Does Steph age the best out of all 3 of those guys? Like Steph close to 40? I kind of feel like he still can be close to what he's doing now. Like I think more than probably even those other 2 guys.
Maybe, but I just don't know how you're ever going to have anyone age like LeBron. I mean, there will be, just because of science and stuff. There will be somebody years from now, maybe, but I don't know if that's 20 years. I don't feel like it's going to be 5. I don't know how anyone is going to age as well as LeBron has in the game of basketball. So I'm not going to put, and I get it, Steph shooting, the whole thing, handle or whatever. I mean, Steph's got like 4 years to go.
Yeah. I'm just saying what you're asking from him at that age of his career, like I think it's just less taxing on Steph than it is on probably the other 2 guys, specifically LeBron. LeBron probably is asked to do the most.
Absolutely. I mean, this is unlike anything I've ever seen. Okay. That was Talking Hoops.
Hump Day
Really
Hoops. Let's get it.